South Park went all in this season, 27, on hating on Trump, on despising conservatives, and on mocking Charlie Kirk. Now, what are they to do? Can season 27 be saved? Or should the Ellisons, who now own it through Skydance, say it's far too depraved and save this season for another day on a significant, maybe even month-long delay? All right, folks, this is out of The Independent. Turning Point USA founder embraces upcoming South Park parody because conservatives should be able to take a joke. It says, as conservatives, we should be able to take a joke, the Turning Point CEO said. Of course, that is Charlie Kirk, who unfortunately, tragically, was taken out by a deranged, evil individual, maybe politically driven, maybe ideologically driven. I would say so. You think so? I think we all think so. All right, folks, let's get into this by Madeline Sharat. It says, Charlie Kirk, a conservative pundit and the founder of Turning Point USA, has embraced South Park's parody of him in the upcoming season of episode of the long-running show's 27th season. Excuse me, it says upcoming second of the episode. Oh, it's not my fault. Okay, they've messed up the grammar. Good job there. It's the second episode of the long-running 27th season. All right, in a fresh teaser for the episode's release on August 6th, South Park Studios aired a clip of iconic South Park character Eric Cartman having a heated spat with a classmate, a scene that bears a close resemblance to Charlie Kirk's takedown of a Cambridge student in May. And you can see that Cartman is looks like him. He's got the hairstyle, and there's BB, the character who is stand-in, and we can see this too. This, I'm not going to endorse this necessarily. Lucky Tedder says Trey Parker, Matt Stone have blood on their hands. Remove South Park from all streaming services. I don't know that I want to go that far. What I will say though is there's a South Park episode next week, and this season has been hyper-focused on Charlie Kirk and on Donald Trump, and some of the stuff that they've done has been, well, for example, they've had President Trump in bed with Satan. Now, Mark, you've got an opinion about this. You don't think that Trey Parker and Matt Stone will back down? Tell me why.
Well, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but there is a pretty perverse incentive for the two of them to run very provocative stuff because I think the world's going to be watching and tuning in. Now, I think there's a little bit of a trap for them. As we were talking about in the prior segment, institutional trust is imploding. And it's not just that nobody trusts the information that they're receiving. They literally don't trust the institutions to do what the institutions are there for. And I don't think Trump can fix all this stuff. I think it's the fourth turning. I think ultimately for these problems to get fixed, society will rapidly have to crave integrity and order. And history tells us that happens fast. And it usually happens after symbolic events like this. Is that going to do it this time around? I don't know. But the national discourse and dialogue feels, like I said, a lot different than it does a week ago. And so if they come out there and they poke the bear, if they do something ghoulish, they're going to get a ton of views. It's going to be very controversial. They have a history of doing that. But it also could be the jump the shark moment where everybody says, you know what, they went too far. And so ultimately what I think that means is that the people higher up that just spend a whole lot of money on this IP have an incentive to pump the brakes and say, you know what, maybe we should skip a week. Maybe this thing that we already created isn't going to go over very well. Maybe we should pull this episode and figure something else out. So there's probably going to be a lot of strife internally, I'm guessing, or this could be the time where the two of them grow up. I don't know.
So let's talk about that, Mark, because there's a second layer to this, right? So South Park was just purchased essentially by CBS, Paramount, Skydance. And Skydance just picked up CBS and Paramount. So it's a little bit complicated, but essentially what it means is that some guys who are not unfriendly with President Trump, the Ellisons, one of the richest families on the planet, Larry and David Ellison, they now own all of this. And I think that they might detest the idea of going forward with a season that now features a guy who was parodied and then deleted from Earth, and a season that has Trump in bed with Satan. Like, I think that may put pressure on them, and they may just say, guys, we're taking a pause. You can come back like in February or something with a new season, but we're I don't know. Mark, what do you think on the polling of that? Like, how will the public respond if they just keep going with this?
I don't know. I think it's a lot of brand risk. They're putting a lot of asset value in danger. And as we've seen, there have been a lot of hot button issues in the last few years where there's been incredible blowback for really tone deaf corporate decisions. Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney, the Target stuff comes to mind.
Cracker Barrel, Jaguar,
like unbelievable. And Twitter wants that lady's head. They want her to be fired. And
figuratively, YouTube. We're not listen. Yeah. We're not part of the other side. All right.
So this could be an absolute crisis for them, and yet they could actually. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I think Trump's not done. I think there's probably going to be some action reaction to this kind of stuff. They were going to continue to lampoon Trump, obviously. The question is how. I don't know. I don't see them just rolling over, but obviously there's probably going to be some adults that prevail and use some sensibilities.
Marty, South Park has always had sort of free reign to mock and make fun of everybody. And when they're turning Kanye West into the lover of gay fish, we can all laugh about that. It seemed to me that this season went much farther into deranged TDS. It was very different for South Park. I know some people say that it happened several years ago, but I do think that South Park has played into a very ugly narrative, and that they probably now don't have the ability to do that any longer. I think this is going to be an unsavory proposition for them to hold to that. Do you think this will be the first time in history that South Park sort of has to come out and say, yeah, we screwed up?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't watched any of South Park this season. I haven't watched much of South Park in a while. I've always thought, that there are times that they are very funny. But I think the idea that Trey and what's his name, Matt need to grow up. This is it. They need to grow up. It's one thing to be lampooning people and being a satire. It's another thing to be this mean and then in any way show that they're reveling in someone's death. I think just in terms of finally having some good taste, which I'm sure they've never had, I think this is the time for them to look in the mirror and say, we got to change. We got to change. This season has to make a about face.
And Ron, I think they actually have to probably take down the episode with Charlie Kirk. I don't know how you can have it on a streaming platform. It's so, it's kind of like in the shadows of 9/11, and well, that's apropos for now, isn't it? Yeah. A lot of movies and TV shows took down any reference to the Twin Towers. So, what are your thoughts on the idea that they might have to take down the Charlie Kirk episode?
Look, I'll be honest. I just really don't like these guys, Trey and Matt, and there are some jokes on South Park that I have found a little bit funny. For the most part, it's not something I watch on the regular. I did think that their takedown of Disney was pretty much right on the nose, but it was also obvious. And but this is what they do. I mean, typically it's not a bad thing. They have typically in the past kind of made fun of everybody. And they've been fair across the board, but now is not the time for that. And not in the wake of something this level of tragic happening. And yeah, if I were any type of a television executive in charge of anything to do with this, I would take the episode down and probably at least postpone the season from release and take a look at what's going on and see if there's any of that narrative that might need to change in the wake of this, out of respect for Charlie's family, loved ones, friends, and just like the country in general, because you don't want to do anything adding any fuel to any fire that might exist.
Yeah, and if there's anything that, and God forbid that there are any others out there that try to replicate anything, but for those kinds of reasons, you can't have anything that supports it. Lauren, this is a very strange place too, and I don't think money matters, but in this situation, we're talking about billions of dollars. Like Skydance spent a lot of money to get South Park, and now it's not funny, and it may not be worth nearly as much given what's happened. And I got a hunch they're gonna have to fix this real fast.
I guess it depends on what you mean by fix this. I'm not a proponent ever of censoring anything or pulling content down, and hindsight's 2020. Now, that's not trying to be insensitive to what's happened to Charlie Kirk and his family. I think Charlie actually enjoyed the joke. That said, I think as a corporation, Paramount's going to be looking at this and saying, we don't know exactly what the atmosphere is right now. The safest course is to delay. And so I would not be surprised at all if they decide that they're not going to go to air this week and maybe the week after that, while they try and figure out what exactly is going to happen in the culture and how do we react to it in a way that hopefully is not inflammatory.
Well, Lauren, do you think that having, because I know that Charlie Kirk, he played it perfectly well, right? The others in the conservative groups, they came out kind of swinging aggressively. And I thought the Charlie Kirk response was the right way to do it because it kind of deflected the mean-spirited humor. But South Park had and has this whole season President Trump depicted as being in bed as a lover of Satan. Mm-hmm. I think that's the kind of stuff that goes over the line. When they did it with Saddam, like it's Saddam, right, from the early 2000s. When you do it with a president, the problem is, I think that for the sickest among us, they're influenced by that sort of thing.
Yes, sure. Crazy people are going to be crazy. But I think in this case, it's the old saying is never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. I think that the antidote to offensive speech is more speech. And I think that you hash it out on the public stage, just like Charlie would have wanted to do. Eventually, people will recognize that something is tasteless and not worthy of being supported, and the market will correct for that. So I don't think, I'm not in favor in any way of them pulling stuff down. I think if they keep trying to push the line, they're going to expose themselves, and there will be a consequence to that, and I suspect Paramount will take care of that situation.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, any other thoughts on this one before we wrap the conversation about South Park?
You know, I was just going to say that I thought J.D. Vance's response to sort of like, hey, I finally made it, because he was on South Park. And, you know, I can totally understand that. I think it's like when when satirical, maybe it's mean-spirited, whatever, but still there's a certain, it's just, we can see this as a fun thing. But now something has really happened in real life, and I think if they have any maturity at all, they should, you know, like Lauren said, they should, you know, postpone some things, take a break, look at what's going on, try to get a sense of what is the right thing to do. It's as though, you know, if Saturday Night Live was going to have a skit about Charlie Kirk this week, you know they would have to say, okay, that one's out, right? It's like that would be so bad and so in such bad taste. They would be canceled, and that would be the end of that. So it just they need to look at that. It's just business.